Michael Koppy, welcome to Wild Ideas Worth Living. You are a wild man. We're excited to have you on. How old are you?
Yes, I'm 75. I'll be 76 here in August.
I love that. I don't ask people their age, but I figured it was warranted because just a little background on January 28th, 2026, you became the oldest ever finisher of the Arrowhead 135-mile race in northern Minnesota, which is amazing. This is not Lake Arrowhead in Southern California. This is Arrowhead in northern Minnesota. The temperature hovered around -2 Fahrenheit, and all competitors had to carry a full complement of survival gear. You also had to carry a whistle around your neck to call for help if needed, with the warning that your mouth could be too numb to yell.
You were a little bit off on temperature there.
Okay, good.
I think you said
Okay.
-2. It actually the first night was -35, so a little bit colder.
Michael Koppy is a retired engineering professor who lives in northern Minnesota. Nowadays, he spends his free time building custom furniture, gardening, and running some of the most grueling ultramarathons in the country. He's completed two fastest known times in the past 10 years, and earlier in 2026, Michael became the oldest person to run the Arrowhead 135. This race is completely bananas. Participants pull giant sleds up snowy hills and run through dark nights on almost zero sleep. All of this takes place in one of the coldest regions in the country during the coldest weeks of the year. I'm Shelby Stanger, and this is Wild Ideas Worth Living, an REI Co-op Studios production presented by Capital One and the REI Co-op MasterCard. You finished this 135-mile race in northern Minnesota. This isn't like a typical ultra because there's all these other elements of cold. Why did you decide to do this race?
Well, I had tried it the year before, and I got 6 miles from the finish when I finally had to drop out. And so this year I was going back for redemption. I knew I could finish it. I just had to not make a silly mistake that I made the year before. The year before, I got to the last aid station. They have three aid stations. And this was the second night. Actually, it was early in the morning. So this was probably about 45 hours into the race. And when I got to that aid station, I had only slept 45 minutes. And so I knew I was going to be tired going into the finish. So I took what I thought were three 100 milligram caffeine tablets, but they turned out to be 200 milligrams. And I don't drink coffee, so I had 600 milligrams in me. And when I left that aid station, I was so buzzed. I sprinted for the next 15 miles, literally passing everybody. I had no control. At one point I passed a couple guys and they wanted to fist bump me and talk to me about, congratulate that I was going to be the first person over 70 to finish this race. I had to run in place while I was talking with them. My legs would not stop moving. And then when I got 6 miles before the finish, I collapsed and fell to the ground. And I couldn't get up. I called the medics. The two medics, Todd and Robbie, came out and picked me up, and they tried to, walk me around because I had 7 hours I still had 7 hours to go before I would have timed out. But there was just no way. My body was just totally shot. And so they had to take me in on their snowmobile.
That must have been so devastating. I don't know if you just sold me on taking caffeine or like terrified me from it, but being able to run 15 miles really fast sounds kind of fun, although not passing out does sound really crazy. How did you recover from that? How long did it take you?
Took a couple weeks, yeah. But it actually takes longer to recover from the sleep deprivation than it does from the physical uh, exercise that you're doing. Going 60 hours like this year, I slept an hour and 5 minutes in 60 hours. So that's what takes the longest. You kind of feel like you're like in jet lag mode after, even after you've had a good night's sleep. Even when you wake up, you just don't feel like you're all there. And that goes on for a couple weeks.
Wow, that's so interesting. Well, let's just get back to the beginning. When did you start running and racing ultras? Because you're like superhuman.
Well, I actually started in junior high school, and ran track and cross country, and when I was in my junior year in high school, they had this trophy plaque in our trophy case that said the 1,000 Mile Club. And so I asked my coach, what is this 1,000 Mile Club? There was only one name on this plaque. And he says, when school gets out in the summer, until school starts in the fall, you have to run 1,000 miles. And so I did the math, and it turned out to be you had to run 13 miles every day during summer vacation. And if you missed a day, of course, the next day you'd have to run a marathon. So you learn pretty quick not to miss too many days. Well, I went for that, and I was able to finish that. So I kind of consider that was my beginning of long distance running.
From a young age, Michael was motivated by a good challenge and a shiny trophy. After he joined the 1,000 Mile Club, he continued to run in his spare time, eventually signing up for ultramarathons just for fun. Throughout his life, Michael has completed numerous long-distance races, ranging from 100 to 250 miles. In 2020, at age 69, he even set a fastest known time on the 310-mile Superior Hiking Trail in Minnesota. Through each of these adventures, Michael has figured out how to stay healthy and fit, allowing him to lead an active lifestyle as he ages. How have you maintained your longevity? Like, how do you not get injured? How are your knees intact? Because this is so rare for runners to like keep going and going. I live in San Diego, home of the triathlon. There are so many busted old triathletes, meaning like they can't walk anymore. Their heart's messed up. Like they are burnt out. They're worn out. And I know them. They were pros. They were awesome. You are just like stronger than ever, it sounds like.
Well, I used to get injured more, and I started doing weights, and that has helped me a lot because it strengthens your core, and it gives me a better overall balance so that I'm, not relying on, I think, just certain muscles that I'm using as a runner. I'm now got a whole body that is fit. And so that really helped me from being injured. I used to get injured a lot more. And after I started doing weights, hardly ever. I did in August of this last year, I tore my meniscus in two places in my knee. I was running with a new running group that started here in Duluth, and they wanted me to come and run with them. And they were running on sidewalks, which was real hard. And then I tried to stay with the leaders, which I shouldn't have. And so we were running really hard as well and fast. And I tore my meniscus in two places, so I had to get orthoscopic surgery. And so I wasn't even sure if I would make it to Arrowhead this year, but I was able to make it there and finish it this year.
Whether it's weightlifting or good genetics, it's impressive that Michael hasn't had to deal with any major injuries over the course of his running career. That durability has allowed him to take on some truly punishing events like the Arrowhead 135. This race takes place in International Falls, Minnesota, a town nestled on the border with Canada whose nickname is the Icebox. All participants have a list of gear that they're required to bring in order to compete, including hand warmers, a whistle, and a sleeping bag that can withstand extreme temperatures. All of that gear weighs upwards of 50 pounds, which the runners have to pull themselves. But this equipment is particularly important because it could take up to 10 hours for runners to get help if something goes wrong. Let's talk about Arrowhead really quickly. Maybe you could paint a picture of what this race is like for someone like me who just doesn't even really spend time. I've never seen a snow race, really, beyond a cross-country ski race in Colorado. Like, what does that look like? What do you have to carry? Where do you sleep?
Right. So it starts in International Falls, the icebox of the lower 48, and they hold it on the last week of January because statistically that's the coldest week of the year. So they are doing everything they can to make it a cold race. And this year it really lived up to it because the start of the race was 17 below when we lined up on the start line. And then, we took off, and the first section was 36 miles, and that's fairly flat. But it's also, most of it is quite in the open. And when we started this year, we had a headwind of about probably 15 to 20 miles an hour. Everybody was having a hard time that first bit until we finally got into the woods because of the wind chill. So then we get to the first aid station, which is actually kind of a general store. We are allowed to buy stuff there, and we can get water there. And then we head out again, and then we go to Mel George, and that is the halfway point. But that's going to be a pull. We call it pulling because you're pulling your sled. It's going to be a pull all night long. And that first night was 35 below. And that's when the majority of the people dropped out this year, because we not only had cold, we got an inch of snow, which is uncommon. When it's cold, it typically doesn't snow. And when you get new snow, that adds friction to everything. So your sled pulls harder. It's harder to just navigate everything.
Wow, Michael, that's incredible. So how do you see at night?
Yeah, well, that's we carry lights, and the section after Mel George is the hilliest section, and we're talking really big hills. They're half a mile long, very steep, and we have to pull our sled up these hills. But the nice thing, once we get to the top of the hill, we get to hop on our sled and slide down. And we're sliding down these hills at like 35 miles an hour. I mean, we're cooking. And most of these hills are at night that we're doing on this third section. And so we're flying down the hills. Well, the second night now, it's a little warmer. It's 25 below. And I pull out I carry two headlights, always to have a backup. So I went to grab my second light. I put this headlight on and I pressed the button to turn it on. Well, the plastic is so hard, it would not indent to turn the light on. So I had to put it back in my sled.
Oh, no.
And I had to grab the original light that I had then. I had already used it for a whole night. And so I put this headlight on that I've used already now for 15 plus hours. And it's like in its saving mode. It's in a dim mode. It's on, but I can only see like 10 feet ahead. And so I get to the top of these hills and I hop on my sled to go. And I'm going down these hills at 35 miles an hour, and I can only see 10 feet ahead. And remember, this is on a snowmobile trail that's about 10 feet wide with woods on both sides. And so if you make a slight mistake, you're going to be in that woods pretty fast. And, all that's in that woods is trees, and they're pretty hard. And it looked like, from my eyes, it looked like I was always going over a cliff because I could only see 10 feet ahead. And then it was pitch dark after that 10 feet. And when you're going 35 miles an hour, that 10 feet is like, that's a second, And so, I was basically going down these hills almost blind. But I had done it the year before, so I knew the race director wouldn't be routing us over cliffs, even though it looked like I was going over a cliff all the time. So I just had to trust my instincts and just, you're using your heels to steer because there is no steering mechanism. And these hills aren't straight. They got curves in them, everything. And, plus you're fatigued now. This is the second night. I haven't had any sleep. We've been going 24 hours a day with this pulling everything. So you're fatigued and you're, not all your mental faculties aren't all there. So that was a real challenge to get through that section.
What's your sled like?
I built my own sled because the ones that were out there, well, my background is engineering. And so why wouldn't I build my own sled, right? My sled is one of the fastest sleds out there. When we're sliding down the hills, like I was mentioning, I slide like 50 feet further than everybody else. And so I'm going faster and that makes it easier for me, right? If I can go 50 feet further on my sled, then I don't have to run 50 feet, right? It's much easier to slide. So it makes total sense. So I designed my own sled. Now I've since built a couple for other friends because they've seen them and they like them. So, but it's basically, I have two runners on the bottom of my sled. Most sleds that you commercially buy are molded. And all they are is a piece of plastic that's put in a mold and they shape it. And the whole sled sits on the bottom of the snow or on a surface of the snow. And to me, that's a higher contact area. So the friction is higher and it's not going to slide as fast. I have 2 runners on mine and I wax those runners. And the plastic that I use is the slipperiest plastic that is available. And so that's why my sled is so fast. And then I also designed it with a box on the back that has 2 inches of insulation all the way around. It has a cover you lift off, and in there is where I carry all my fluids and all my food so they don't freeze. And then that box serves as my seat to sit on when I slide down the hill. I haven't seen any sleds out there like mine.
When Michael is not using his sled to careen down hills, he's towing it behind him. He converted a tool belt into a harness and attached a couple of 5-foot-long elastic dog leashes to his waist. The stretch makes it much smoother and easier to haul his sled. As a skilled engineer, part of the fun of these ultras is how much problem solving he gets to do. He loves building his own equipment, navigating through the wilderness, and finding real-time solutions when things go wrong. The sunshine is back, and I'm planning to spend the next few months outside, catching waves, camping, and hiking the trails all around San Diego. If your summer plans also involve spending as much time outside as possible, the REI Co-op MasterCard offers rewards and benefits that support your love of the outdoors. It's just for REI Co-op members and earns card rewards on every purchase at REI and everywhere else MasterCard is accepted. What I love is that rewards are available in 1 to 2 days, so all of those stops on the way to the adventure, from fuel for the drive to last-minute gear runs, it all adds up. See if you're pre-approved with no risk to your credit score. To learn more about the REI Co-op MasterCard program, head to rei.com/MasterCard-podcast. That's rei.com/MasterCard-podcast. Terms apply. When you're moving fast, covering ground, and chasing a wild adventure, the gear you carry matters. That's where Benchmade comes in. Headquartered in Oregon City, Oregon, Benchmade has been building purpose-driven knives since 1987. Their tools are designed to show up when it counts and last a lifetime. Every Benchmade knife comes with a lifetime warranty and free LifeSharp service, which means free sharpening forever. I love gear that's in it for the long haul. For nearly a decade, the bug-out knife has been the standard for ultralight carry, ready for the trail, camp, and everyday utility. The new bug-out Vapor takes that further with a slimmer, more refined build, made to move fast without extra weight. And now exclusively at REI, you can find the bug-out 535BK-2504. It's the same trusted performance with a bold outdoor look that feels just as good at camp as it does back home. Check out Benchmade knives at your local REI or rei.com. In 2026, at the age of 75, Michael Koppy became the oldest person to complete the Arrowhead 135, an ultramarathon that takes place in the dead of the frigid Minnesota winter. There are so many variables in this race that there's almost no chance everything will go according to plan. Michael certainly has had his fair share of snafus during this run, like when he mistakenly packed half of his calories in the wrong drop bag and he had to eat power bars for 35 miles straight. Or when the weather was so cold at night that he developed frostbite on his arms and feet. But eventually, after more than 50 hours on trail, Michael made it to the place where he had previously dropped out. And Tom and Robbie, the medics that had helped him the year before, were standing there cheering him on. That encouragement gave Michael the motivation he needed to keep going.
I got about 4 miles before the last checkpoint, and I was just totally beat. It wasn't that I was really tired in terms of sleepy tired, but I was just physically spent. So I pulled out my sleeping bag and I laid that right on the side of the trail, and I slept for an hour and 5 minutes. Um, and my sleeping bag is a -30 sleeping bag. Now, when I hopped in that bag has been on my sled for 2 nights and 2 days. And I hopped in that sleeping bag and I was so tired, as soon as I hopped in, I fell asleep. When I woke up, though, my feet were froze. And I found out that I actually got frostbite. I was laying on my side and my leg that was on top got frostbite because even though I was in a -30 sleeping bag, the inside of the bag was also probably the temperature of the outside by now, and there was nothing to warm it up. But again, I didn't know that till the race was over. So I got going again. When I got to the same point that the year before I had dropped out, which was 6 miles before the finish, here Robbie and Ted were standing, the two medics that brought me in were standing there cheering me on. And that was so uplifting at the time. I mean, I even kind of get choked up now when I talk about it, because that was like, it just like was such a inspiration for me. And they told me, up ahead is the 5 mile mark. There's a intersection that we have to navigate. And he said, when you get there, you got 5 miles to the finish. And then finally, when I got to the 5 mile mark, I did the math. Now, of course, I've been out here like 55 hours or so, so my math skills have really diminished. But I did the math. I knew what pace I was going. And to me, it looked like when I did the math, I was going to miss the finish by an hour. So I called, I thought, here's another year, I'm not going to make it. And so I called Ted and I said, hey, Ted, you might as well come out and get me with the snowmobile because I'm not going to make it. And he says, and he could see me on a screen because you can track all the runners. He said, no, Mike, you're going to make it. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You got it. And so I said, okay, and because I knew I wasn't probably the best person to make that judgment at this point in the race. So I kept going and finally got about, I think it was almost 2 miles before the finish. But at this point now, I was so totally spent. I was just going on fumes. And here is Ted on his snowmobile. And he says, I'm going to bring you into the finish. And so what he would do is he would park his snowmobile and him and I would walk together, and then we'd go a little distance. Then he'd run back to his snow machine, get on it, go way ahead of me, and then he'd come back to me, and then we kept leapfrogging that way. And then finally, when we got about a quarter mile before the finish, he took off and went to the finish and told everybody I was coming in. And so there was a huge crowd there, and it was great. And so then finally, I crossed the finish line, and Ted picked me up, put me on the back of his snow machine, because we had to go to the hotel where the hospitality room was, where they were doing all the festivities. Well, he brought me on the snow machine right to the front door. And then he lifted me off, and Robbie was at the front door of the hotel with the wheelchair. And they put me in the wheelchair, wheeled me up to the second floor where the hospitality room was, where all the racers that had finished were. And when they brought me in, I got a standing ovation from all the, past people that had finished, and that was great. And then I received my award, my trophy for finishing and being the first person over 70, being 75 to finish Arrowhead. And when they were going to give me that, I said, no, you got to wait for Robbie and Ted, because they earned this as much as I did. So they had to get them. And then when I got the award, they were there. So.
Michael may have completed a record-setting run at the Arrowhead 135, but that doesn't mean he's done with this event. People can also ski and bike Arrowhead, and Michael is determined to try one of those next year. He said he might not decide which he'll do until a week before the race, so he has to keep up with his training to make sure he's ready for anything. Can you tell me what like a typical training week is like for you today?
Yeah, so I suppose probably in the middle of my training, I'm probably doing 50 miles a week. At my peak, I'm probably doing 70 miles a week. And people ask me, how much do you run a day? Well, it really varies because like Friday and Saturday are my long run days. So those days can vary from 20 to 30 miles, depending on what I'm doing and what phase of training I'm in. But then during the week,
But you'll stack them, so you'll do Friday a long day and Saturday a long day?
Yeah, because you got to get used to being on tired legs. When you're doing 200 milers, you're out there 3-4 days, so you've got to get used to what it feels like to be on legs that are spent, and because that's how you're going to feel.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so you got to get used to that.
Okay, so Friday, Saturday, you still at 75 are doing like 30 miles a day?
Yeah, on those long days, yes. Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
And then I'll try to do a speed session. Now I do my speed sessions using a treadmill and a thing called light speed, which is a machine that unweights you about 30%. And so I can run fast and hard on the treadmill, and it doesn't hurt my knees or hurt my joints and not be hammered the next day. So, but I still get the full cardio and even a faster speed because I can run really probably a minute and a half to 2 minutes faster on the treadmill than I can out on the road with that light speed attachment.
I'm so impressed by your longevity because my knees, the cartilage between my knees have kind of worn out a little bit. I also played soccer, so who knows?
Yeah.
But your knees are fine. Everything's fine.
No
arthritis.
I was told after I did my second FKT, so I have 2 FKTs. One is on the Superior Hiking Trail, and then one's on a trail called the North Country Trail that is about 4,000 miles long. But I did the Wisconsin segment from the Michigan border to the Minnesota border across Wisconsin. And at the very last day that I was doing that, I heard my knee rip 2 different times. But I was able to finish it and still set the FKT. But I went in then to see the orthopedic doctor, and he told me, you don't have hardly any cartilage left in your knee. You should not be running anything at all. He says you shouldn't even be doing any high impact, let alone 200 miles. And he says, I don't know how you do it because most people would be in such pain. And I wasn't really feeling any pain. But I tore my meniscus that time too in 2 places, but he said they were nice, clean tears, so they would heal on themselves. I didn't have to get any surgery at all. Where this last time they were jagged tears. And but since then, I have probably run 7 or 8 200-mile races since he told me I shouldn't do anything. So you can't believe everything they tell you,
So what keeps you coming back to these races? Like, you love endurance. You love these races. It's so cool. And I could hear the passion in your voice. I could hear your infectious personality. Like, what is it about them that you're just never going to stop?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I just love the movement of running. It's, for me, it's meditation, it's spiritual. I always make my best decisions out on the trail. All of my hard decisions I've ever had to make, I've made them on the trail. And I always trust the judgment that I come back with from the trail. And there's a lot of, other parts of running that are really good. I mean, like when I taught in the college, we had our student services was 2 floors down. And I would have to take students down there, and and at this time I'm probably 65, and I have to walk these students down and walk them back up. And when we're coming back up the stairs, 2 flights of stairs, I'm skipping every other step. And when we get to the top of the stairs, the student is just gasping for air, and I'm not even breathing, and they're 20 years old, I'm 65. So that's one benefit of running, but it makes your quality of life, instead of just living, you have a quality with that living. And that's one thing about, that's to me a side benefit. One of the other things, I've done runs where I've run 10 miles and it feels like I've only been running for a minute. You're in the flow, and it's just time disappears. When you're running, especially in a race, you're in the here and now. You don't think about the past. You don't think about the future. You're focused on just the here and now, the moment.
Yeah, for you, running is meditation. That's what it is for me. It feels so good. What advice would you give to someone who wants to chase a wild idea, regardless of their age?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, don't let these external factors stop you from going after what you want. So, one of those factors is people tell me, you're whatever, 75 or whatever, and you shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff that I'm doing anymore. Well, that's, if you want to do it, just do it. And, there's all kinds of things that our society says we shouldn't do. But I think you just can't let those outside factors stop you. If it's a passion, and to me, when you feel a passion for something, you got to go after it. And, I've heard people my age say, oh, I'm done chasing those passions or those dreams. Well, to me, that's kind of almost like saying you're kind of done with life. And I don't want to be that way until I'm dead. That's when I'm done. So as long as I can keep moving, I'm going to be doing something.
If you want to keep in touch with Michael, you can look him up on Facebook at Michael Koppy. That's MichaelKoppy. Yes, that's Facebook, not Instagram. If you like this episode with Michael, you'll also like our episode with ultrarunner Harvey Lewis. We'll link to his episode in the show notes. Wild Ideas Worth Living is part of the REI Podcast Network. It's hosted by me, Shelby Stanger, produced by Annie Fassler, Sylvia Thomas, and Sam Pierce-Nitzberg of Puddle Creative. Our senior producer is Jenny Barber. Our executive producers are Paolo Motola and Joe Crosby. Thank you again to our partner, Capital One, and the REI Co-op MasterCard. As always, we love it when you follow the show, take time to rate it, and write a review wherever you listen. And remember, some of the best adventures happen when you follow your wildest ideas.